I never thought a muscle cramp in the middle of the night would change my entire life. But here we are. Let me back up and explain how I ended up sharing a cabin with Cassian Chen, and how what started as an innocent offer to help with a Charlie horse turned into something I definitely wasn't prepared for. So I'm Nate, 24, working as a junior architect at a firm in Portland. When my boss announced the annual company retreat to some rustic lodge in the Cascades, I wasn't exactly thrilled. Forced bonding activities, trust falls, probably some kind of ropes course situation. But it was mandatory, so I packed my bag and tried to maintain a positive attitude. The lodge was actually pretty nice, all exposed beams and stone fireplaces, surrounded by pine trees that smelled incredible. What wasn't nice was discovering they'd overbooked and some of us would need to share the smaller cabins instead of getting our own rooms. Of course, I got assigned to share. And of course, my bunkmate was Cassian. I'd noticed Cassian before. Kind of hard not to. He worked in the structural engineering department, so our paths crossed occasionally in meetings. He was half Chinese, half something else, with this perfectly messy black hair that somehow always looked intentionally styled, even though I'm pretty sure he just rolled out of bed like that. Sharp cheekbones, these intense dark eyes, and he had this way of listening to people that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Plus, he was built. Not like gym-obsessed built, but lean and strong in that way that suggested he actually used his body for real activities, not just aesthetically pleasing ones. I'd always been careful around Cassian. Too careful, probably. I'd come out to myself about being into guys maybe 2 years ago, but I'd only told a handful of people. Definitely no one at work. And Cassian was exactly the kind of guy who made me nervous because I was attracted to him and terrified he'd somehow pick up on it. When we arrived at our cabin, I immediately went for the bottom bunk. Cassian laughed and said he didn't mind either way. He moved through the small space with this easy confidence, unpacking his stuff, making conversation about how ridiculous the team-building schedule looked. I was hyper-aware of everything. The way his t-shirt rode up slightly when he reached to put something on the top bunk. The casual way he changed shirts right there in the room, like it was nothing. I focused very intently on organizing my toiletries. The first day was exactly as awkward as expected. We did icebreakers. We did a scavenger hunt. We had a cookout where people drank too much and got weirdly emotional about company values. Cassian and I ended up on the same team for most activities, and I started to relax a little. He was funny, kind of sarcastic in a way that never felt mean. He had this running commentary on everything that had me trying not to laugh at inappropriate moments. That night, back in our cabin, we stayed up later than I'd planned. Cassian had brought a flask of actually decent whiskey, and we sat on our respective bunks, talking about everything except work. He told me about growing up in Seattle, about his mom who was a concert pianist and his dad who taught literature. I told him about my small-town upbringing in Eastern Oregon, about how I'd always drawn buildings and floor plans as a kid, even before I knew what an architect was. There was this moment where our conversation lulled, and Cassian was looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Then he smiled and said he was going to brush his teeth, and the moment passed. I lay in my bunk after the lights were out, listening to him breathe, wondering what the hell I was doing getting all twisted up over a coworker I barely knew. The second day involved a long hike, like really long. 8 miles through increasingly steep terrain. I'm in decent shape, but I'm not a regular hiker. By the time we got back to the lodge, my legs were screaming. Cassian seemed fine, of course. He'd barely broken a sweat. I made it through dinner, through the evening session about quarterly goals or whatever, and back to our cabin. I was so tired I practically fell into my bunk. Cassian was still up, reading something on his phone, but I was asleep within minutes. I woke up around 2 in the morning with the most vicious Charlie horse in my right calf I'd ever experienced. I mean, it felt like someone was twisting my muscle into a rope. I gasped and grabbed my leg, trying to stretch it out, but the cramp just intensified. I must have made some kind of noise because suddenly Cassian's face appeared over the edge of the top bunk. "What's wrong?" he whispered. "Charlie horse," I managed to get out through gritted teeth. "It's bad." He didn't hesitate. He swung down from the top bunk in one fluid movement and crouched next to my bed. "Here, let me help," he said. "I've had these before. You need to stretch it but also work out the muscle." Before I could respond, his hands were on my calf, strong and sure. He pushed my toes back toward my shin, stretching the muscle, and I felt the cramp start to ease just slightly. Then he started kneading the muscle with his thumbs, working from my ankle up toward my knee with firm, deliberate pressure. "Breathe," he said quietly. "Just breathe through it." I tried, but I was suddenly very aware that I was lying in bed in just my boxer briefs, and Cassian was touching my bare leg, and his face was maybe a foot from mine in the darkness. His hands were warm and confident, moving over my calf with a kind of focused attention that made my breath catch for reasons that had nothing to do with the muscle cramp. The pain was easing, slowly, but Cassian kept working the muscle. "Better?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended. "That's helping." His hands moved higher, just above my knee, massaging the area where the muscle connected. "It's all tight through here too," he said. "You probably tensed everything up when the cramp hit." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. His touch was doing things to me that were definitely not appropriate. I was grateful for the darkness, grateful he couldn't see my face, couldn't see how my breathing had changed. His hands slid back down to my calf, then up again, working the muscle with these long, smooth strokes. The cramp was completely gone now, but he didn't stop. If anything, his touch became slower, more deliberate. His thumbs traced patterns on the inside of my calf, and I felt my whole body respond. "Nate," he said, and something in his voice made my heart start pounding. His hands had stilled, resting warm against my leg. "Is this okay?" The question hung in the air between us. I knew what he was really asking. This had moved beyond helping with a muscle cramp, and we both knew it. "Yes," I whispered. His hands moved again, sliding higher, over my knee, onto my thigh. The touch was unmistakably intentional now, exploratory. I heard him take a breath. Then he moved closer, kneeling beside the bunk. His face was very close to mine now, and even in the darkness I could see the question in his eyes. I should have been panicking. I should have been thinking about work, about the fact that we had to go back to the office after this retreat, about all the reasons this was complicated. Instead, I reached up and touched his face, and he leaned into my hand like he'd been waiting for permission. When he kissed me, it was soft at first, questioning. I kissed him back, and something in both of us seemed to release. His hand cupped the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened. He tasted like toothpaste and something else, something uniquely him. I made a sound I wasn't proud of, and I felt him smile against my lips. He pulled back just slightly. "I've wanted to do that since the first time I saw you in that design review meeting," he said. "You were arguing with Patterson about load-bearing walls, and you had this intensity about you that just completely undid me." I stared at him. "That was 8 months ago." "I know." He kissed me again, gentler this time. "I've been trying to figure out if you were even into guys, trying to decide if it was worth the risk of making things weird at work. Then we got assigned to share a cabin, and I thought maybe it was a sign." "I've been so careful around you," I admitted. "I was terrified you'd notice I was attracted to you." "Nate, I definitely noticed. You're not as subtle as you think. But I also noticed you never mentioned a girlfriend, never talked about dating anyone, always changed the subject when relationship stuff came up. I was like 90% sure, but that last 10% kept me from saying anything." His hand was still on my neck, his thumb brushing along my jawline. The touch was gentle, affectionate, and it made my chest ache in the best way. "So what now?" I asked. "Now," he said, "I'd really like to keep kissing you if that's okay. And then tomorrow we can figure out the rest." He didn't wait for an answer, just kissed me again, and I pulled him closer. It was awkward with me lying down and him kneeling beside the narrow bunk, so he solved the problem by carefully climbing into the bed with me. It was a tight fit, both of us squeezed into a space meant for one, but I wasn't complaining. He was warm and solid against me, and when he wrapped his arm around my waist, I felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't even realized was unsettled. We kissed for a long time, slow and exploratory, learning each other. His hands traced patterns on my back, slipped under my shirt to touch bare skin. I ran my fingers through his hair, and it was just as soft as I'd imagined. He made these quiet sounds when I kissed his neck, and I filed that information away for later. Eventually, we settled into just holding each other. My head was on his chest, his arms around me, our legs tangled together. I could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. "This is nice," I said quietly. "Yeah," he agreed. His hand was moving in slow circles on my back. I was worried the reality wouldn't live up to the 8 months of imagination, but this is better. "We should probably sleep," I said, even though I didn't want the moment to end. "We probably should." He made no move to return to his own bunk. We didn't sleep much that night. We talked in whispers, shared more kisses, held each other like we were afraid the morning would somehow undo everything. He told me about his last relationship, a guy he'd dated in college who'd wanted different things. I told him about my slow process of accepting my sexuality, about the fear and relief that had come with finally admitting it to myself. When light started filtering through the cabin window, we were still wrapped around each other. Cassian kissed my forehead and said we should probably get up before someone came knocking. I didn't want to let him go, but he was right. We moved through our morning routine with a new awareness of each other. He borrowed my toothpaste. I caught him watching me while I got dressed. When we left the cabin, walking toward the lodge for breakfast, our hands brushed together, and he hooked his pinky finger around mine for just a second. The rest of the retreat was a special kind of torture. We had to sit through presentations and team activities while I was hyper-aware of Cassian across the room. He'd catch my eye and smile, this secret smile that was just for me, and I'd have to focus very hard on whatever was being discussed. During breaks, we'd find excuses to end up near each other. A brief touch in passing, a whispered comment that made me laugh, these stolen moments that felt more significant than they should. At lunch, he sat next to me, and under the table, his leg pressed against mine. Such a simple thing, but it made my pulse race. That night, there was no pretense. As soon as we were back in our cabin, Cassian pulled me close and kissed me properly. We ended up in the bottom bunk again, this time with more urgency, more certainty. His hands mapped my body with focused attention, and I explored him in return, finally allowed to touch all the places I'd only imagined. We talked about what would happen when we got back to Portland. He wanted to try dating for real, not just a retreat hookup. I did too, but I was nervous about work, about people finding out. He understood, said we could take it slow, be discreet until we figured things out. But he was clear that he wanted this, wanted us. The last day of the retreat, during the closing session where everyone shared their key takeaways, I found myself actually meaning it when I said the experience had been transformative. People probably thought I meant the leadership workshop or the goal-setting exercises. Cassian knew better. He gave me that smile again, the one that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. We drove back to Portland in our separate cars, but we'd already made plans for dinner that weekend. A real date, not a forced team-building exercise. When I got home to my apartment, I found a text from him already waiting. Made it home. Can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? I smiled at my phone like an idiot and texted back. Tomorrow too soon? His response was immediate. "Tomorrow's perfect." That was 3 months ago. We did take it slow at work at first. Casual conversations, nothing that would raise eyebrows. But outside the office, we spent almost every evening together. He learned that I liked to cook, so I'd make dinner while he sat at my kitchen counter, telling me about his day. I learned that he played piano like his mom, and sometimes he'd play for me. These beautiful, complicated pieces that made me understand why people called music a language. We had our first real fight about a month in, something stupid about scheduling and miscommunication. I was terrified it meant everything was falling apart, but Cassian just held me and said relationships take work, and he was willing to do the work if I was. We figured it out. We kept figuring things out. Eventually, people at work started to notice we were spending a lot of time together. A few knowing looks, a couple of careful questions. We didn't officially announce anything, but we stopped hiding. When the company holiday party came around, Cassian asked if I wanted to go together, like together. I said yes. Now it's February, and I'm lying in my bed, the bed I share with Cassian more often than not these days, watching him sleep. His hair is messy in that way I love, and there's a slight smile on his face like he's having a good dream. In a few hours, we'll get up and go to work, where we're just colleagues who happen to be dating. But here, in this quiet morning light, we're everything. He stirs, opens his eyes, and sees me watching him. "Morning," he says, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I say back. He pulls me closer, kisses my shoulder. "You know what I was just thinking about?" "What?" "That night you got the Charlie horse. How nervous I was, trying to figure out if I was reading the situation right, if you wanted me to keep touching you, or if I was about to make everything incredibly awkward." I laugh. I was lying there trying not to completely lose it because you were touching me, and it was everything I'd been trying not to think about for months. "We were both disasters," he says, grinning. "Still are, honestly." "Yeah, I agree." Kissing him. "But we're disasters together." He pulls back just enough to look at me seriously. "I love you, you know. I know we haven't said it yet, but I do. I love you. My heart does this thing in my chest, this expansion that feels like it might burst. I love you too," I tell him, and it's the easiest truth I've ever spoken. He kisses me again, slow and thorough, and I think about how a muscle cramp in the middle of the night led to this. To him. To us. To waking up next to someone who knows me, really knows me, and loves me anyway. To finally feeling like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Later, over coffee, Cassian mentions that his lease is up in 2 months. He asks, casual, but not really casual, if I've thought about maybe getting a bigger place together. I look at him, this person who saw me before I was ready to be seen, who touched me with gentle hands and opened up something in me I didn't know was locked away. "Yeah," I say. "I've thought about it. Let's do it." His smile could light up the entire city. So that's how a Charlie horse changed my life. It gave me the excuse to let someone close, to stop hiding, to reach for what I wanted instead of just imagining it. It gave me Cassian and everything that came with him, the fear and the risk and the absolute rightness of it. My leg hasn't cramped since that night, but sometimes I think about it. About the pain that woke me up, about Cassian's hands on my skin, about the moment everything shifted, about how sometimes the things that hurt lead us exactly where we need to go. I wouldn't change any of it. Not the fear, not the uncertainty, not the awkward company retreat or the too small cabin or the ridiculous team-building exercises. Because all of it led to this, to him, to us, to coming home to someone who makes my coffee exactly right and leaves notes in my lunch and plays piano at midnight when he can't sleep. To being known and loved and chosen every single day. And it all started with a muscle cramp and an offer to help. Funny how life works sometimes.